And then Keats is having a principle of building construction in August at Saxey. So if y'all are interested in that, you go on their website. It's a 12-hour class, so it's like 8 one day and 4 the next. With the National Fire Escape Association, we'll talk to us today. We appreciate him coming in from Detroit. No, Boston. Where was it?
I've actually been in all those places, but Boston.
Boston
Guy.
And
Just make sure that
Just
I'm
so
from
y'all know.
Boston.
Gabriel is the one that kind of helped get him here, and we really appreciate that. You taking care of that for us, getting it all scheduled, a lot of help. I think it's going to be a good class.
And just to prove that I'm from Boston, I parked my car outside. And that's, right after this, I'm going down to the harbor. And so that's our end of that's as far as we're going to go with the accents. So today, normally I teach this class, and this is a 6-hour continuing education course. Not today. Today I got about an hour and a half, right? So I have to bring the machine gun with me. So I'm actually going to go. So a lot of this, what I do is I really rapid fire through it, and I really tell you where everything is, how you're going to find it, answer a ton of your questions. So it's very quickly through this, but then answering a lot of your questions that you may have. So that's how we're going to do it. So that way you can understand just what's out there. But this is usually so if you have a bigger conference once a year and you want to bring me in, this is usually done in 2 parts. Morning part for about 3 hours, lunch break, and then in the afternoon, for those that can't stay the full 6 hours, we do what's called a downtown walk around. We'd actually go to downtown and start applying what you learned first thing in the morning. Because we're able to show you how to look at fire escapes from the ground. You don't have to get on them anymore. You can actually see what's wrong with them. And fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. So that's what we're going to be teaching. Okay. So I'll do it. You're going to be the time. What time do we have right now? And you want to go to 1:30? Is that what it is?
Somewhere between 1 and 1:30 to be fine.
1 and
If
1:30.
anybody needs to leave, they know they can just ease out.
Sure.
So,
And so in about 45 minutes, I'll just take a little quick little break, and then just to give you guys a little stretch, and then we'll get right back into it, finish it. But the one thing I want you guys to understand is just by taking a look at this picture tells a lot. Fire escapes have to be built at 100 pounds per square foot. So any properly fabricated and installed fire escape will never hurt or kill anybody because it's made to handle 100 pounds per square foot. They're so robust that they're actually double the capacity of whatever you could physically put on them. So if somebody says you can't party on them, you can't have any people on it, these are made only for firemen. When you look at a typical 5x5, that is 5 times 5 is 25 times 100 pounds, that's 2,500 pounds. So we've had our engineers calculate that out. So everybody, in order for us to reach the 2,500 pound limit on a 5x5, I need 2x2 people, 10 feet tall, weighing anywhere from 600 to 700 pounds a person. You got any of those here? So that's it. So right now you can have, to give you, now let's bring it down to firemen. People in the building. If I have an average 150 pound person in the building, and we have 10 of them, that's only 1,500 pounds. Can I get 10 people in the residence to fit a 5x5? Now let's go down to firemen. Firemen weigh 300 pounds after they weigh 200 plus 100 of gear. Can I put 5 300-pound firemen in a 5x5? But that's what it's. So there's still an extra 1,000 pounds. So if anybody ever tells you that a fire escape failed because people were partying on it, too many firemen were on it, these things are built to, you can fill it with firemen, people, anything you want. You can have people on piggyback, and these things will never fall because they're built already beyond the capacity of what you could fill with live people, just to make you feel better. So what happens is, these were built 75 to 100 years ago. Some of them are 50 to 75 years ago, but you're looking at an average age of 75 and they've never been inspected or load tested. So there's your problem. That's it. They've never been inspected. So what fails is not the fire escape, but the fasteners in the fire escape have expanded. That's it. Not the steel, not the bars. I mean, yeah, you got some rot here and there in certain corners because of accumulation. The gutter's been dropping water on one location, yeah. But when you look at a fire escape that's built, everything is at least a 1/4 inch thick. But you put 2 1/4 inches next to each other and you put them in a corner, you put water on it all day long, those 1/4 inches will rot to nothing. If you leave it alone, Okay? A fire escape needs to stay wet in order for it to keep rusting. So you take a piece of rusted fire escape, you just put one out in the Arizona desert. You take the same piece of the fire escape, you bring it out to the West Coast, or the East Coast actually. In 5 years' time, the East Coast one will rot to nothing, but the one in the desert will stop. Even though it started with rust, it stopped, because if you don't have moisture, you don't have rust. So in every connection, if you can stop water from getting back into that connection, that fire escape will have a longer life than it had in its first time, because every fire escape ever built never had connection, silicone in its connections. Were never sealed. Just paint was the only thing keeping. And when they heat up in the summer, they do this. When they cool down in the winter, they do this. That cracks the paint, and that's what allows water to get into a connection. It was never primed or painted. So, you have books in front of you, right? So what we're going to talk about is where everything is. Okay, so I teach this class coast to coast. I've taught from Seattle to San Diego, Chicago to Texas, Maine to Florida. So let's talk about what you should have in that book. This is the quick cheat book of everything ever built out there. Oh, that exists out there. So if you have a piece of paper you want to write on the back of it, let me tell you where you can go and just take down information of people who already have existing programs. The oldest one that I've been dealing with is over almost 15 years now is Seattle. They brought me in when 4 people almost fell to their death. So all these times people bring you in, there's always somebody that died, somebody got seriously injured. So Seattle started it. So if you want to go to seattle.gov, they got a program. It's not the best, even though they were the first. They started and then they stopped. The best one, Portland, Oregon. I've had meetings like this in Portland. I'm probably working on 10 years now. So just be aware, whatever we're going to discuss today is the start of a 3 to 5 year adventure, because everybody and his sister is going to fight you. You know, and nobody wants to talk about the bastard child of egress. And so you're going to piss off everybody you can ever imagine. The owners who fund the campaigns, the mayors, the councilmen, everybody. Because, you know, some people have buildings that they have 1, 2 buildings. Some people have 10, 20 buildings. Some people have 100, 200 buildings. Some people have 1,000 buildings. And if you bring them a fire escape issue that could generate, you know, $3,000, $13,000, or $33,000 worth of work, they're not going to be happy with you. So be aware that, so this has to be long-term. This is a safe structures initiative. We're not fixing fire escapes. We're just verifying that the fire escapes are safe structures. So you can actually ask that all fire escapes get tagged. So you go to Seattle, you go to Portland, Oregon, they put in tags on their fire escapes. You got a white one, gives you all the information you need. It's permanently affixed 7 to 10 feet off the ground. If it's in repair, it's got a yellow one, and if it's imminent danger, it's got a red tag on it. So just like anything that's out that has an issue out there, you can tag out. So let's start off on the book of all the things I'm going to talk about today. This right here is a repairs and procedures guideline. So we can send you the PDF or the Word document of this. You can strip it of all the information it has and put it in yourself. But that tells you what you do when you inspect, what you do when you repair, and what you do when you're painting it. Because the lead law has changed on this. The EPA since 2010 says that all fire escapes older than 78, which is every fire escape you probably know, has lead paint. So no welding on it, and there's anybody that's going to scrape and paint, they must have an EPA renovator's license, right? Let's talk about the EPA. Well, the EPA, as I just mentioned, that's where you're going to get the code associated with that. So now people who are going to be fixing fire escapes can rebolt fire escapes. They can't weld on fire escapes because they have lead. But that was the preferred method. We call them the welding witch doctors. That's another thing we're going to discuss today. Why welding is not an appropriate way to fabricate fire escapes, and it's also not an appropriate way to repair a fire escape. Because 99% of them are built with bolts, so guess what you fix them with? Bolts. Open a bolt, take it out, take the rust, put the bolt back in, you're done. That for 50 to 75 years, the welding witch doctors have been there, and they just weld the rust right in position. So it's good that day. A year later, it snaps back the welds. These are the first confidence tests I've designed. The first confidence test in Seattle, they didn't have it. There was never a checklist for fire escapes in the US. So I created one, and this is the first phase of, so if you go on to seattle.gov, you're gonna see one there. Is it the best? No, it's got a lot of holes in it that rats and cats and cockroaches went through. So we have the latest, greatest, which is in your book that you handed. You have an actual confidence test. It's 25 specific questions. So it's one of the loose documents that was given to you. But this is generation 1. And like anything, we keep improving. So we have, as an attachment, we have the latest, greatest. I'll go over that later. We have typical examinations. With today's digital technology, you must take photos of all your fire escapes. So when you guys get a photo, any report, no longer a single piece of paper that says the fire escape is in need of attention, it has deterioration, rust jacking. Nope, I want to see pictures. All right, so there's pictures and documents. There's plenty of documents that you guys have, as you know, when you go over certain size building, they need construction control, which means it must have an engineer of oversight, some design professional overseeing. So a lot of times these fire escapes need engineer oversight, because if you leave it to the owner and he's got 2-3 prices in front of him, $3,000 from the witch doctors, $13,000 for a half witch doctor but half do it good right guy, and then you have $33,000 from the right guy to do it because it comes with a 15-year warranty. What do you think the owner's going to pick? Right? So right now you introduce the oversight. The oversight now takes a lot of responsibility away from you, because the oversight, that engineer, that design professional, or that other acceptable to the building official will have to sign off on a witch doctor, a half witch doctor, or a fully licensed and insured vendor. So by putting that back on, you make sure that every fire escape, in order for it to be certified, there is a process, and the process starts out with a technical report. If there's no technical report and oversight, because you don't got time to watch these things, you're not gonna accept a repair on a fire escape. Okay? For 100 years, fire escapes have been a concern, and I have a document here from Cincinnati, and it says that in 1885, the fire marshal was concerned that a lot of his buildings didn't have second means of egress out. So it's been a concern for over 100 years that fire escapes were going to be a great answer to a lot of these buildings that had one staircase in it. Okay, so this is how they've all been built. They haven't changed in 100 years. Every fire escape built today was built the same way 100 years ago. Instead of rivets now, they're using bolts. And a lot of fire escapes are now welded fire escapes, even though you see some, but if you don't maintain and galvanize that welded fire escape, guess what happens to the interior connection of a painted steel fire escape that you just welded? And they didn't treat the connection. Water's gonna get in there, it's gonna rust it, it's gonna snap that weld from the inside out. But if you're gonna have a welded fire escape and it's been galvanized, now it's been protected. So I'm not saying you can't weld fire escapes, I'm saying it's not the preferred method. Because when they heat up and cool down, they're always moving, and welds don't allow too much movement. All fire escapes must be complete to grade. So we gotta make sure that ladders that end 9 feet off the ground must be complete to grade with a slide or a cantilever. Fire escapes over rooftops must have a continuous catwalk system. These are all codes that have been around for 100 years, but a lot of people have cheated the code. They changed the roof out. Did the catwalk ever get back there? Nope. Do the people know it's in the corner now that where that ladder goes to the ground? Let's talk about the code. Can you build a new fire escape today? New construction. So remember that today you cannot build a new fire escape on new construction. Can I build a new fire escape on existing structures? Yes. So the reason why a lot of your structures are being converted is after you've exhausted all means of putting 2 staircases inside, all pre-existing buildings have the right to use a fire escape as a second means of egress once you've exhausted all means of putting the staircase inside. So some of these mansions are going to get saved and turned into condos if you allow, because the code allows it, a fire escape on the backside to answer the egress, because there's no way with a centralized staircase can you have a second stair show up somewhere in the building. It's physically impossible. So does the Historical Society let you raise the building because you couldn't find an answer? The answer is fire escapes. So no new fire escapes on new construction. You dig a hole in the ground, no fire escapes can ever show up. But you have an existing barn, church, mansion, anything that has that needs an answer for a second means of egress. If you can't find a place inside, so you still have to try to exhaust all means of putting it inside. A lot of times the most economical way of doing it is outside through a door, 7-Eleven rise and run all the way to the ground. Okay? We're going to go at the end of this, we're going to tell you how to do it. We're going to say what's the best way, and you're going to piggyback. So you're not going to start a fire escape, team that's going to go out and look for fire escapes. You're going to tie this into sprinklers, building permits, Any examinations that you have, you're gonna add this to the checklist. That's all you're gonna do. By adding it to the checklist, people can't close a permit, can't close an activity on a building until they provide you with a certificate for the fire escape. That's all it is. So you're not ordering fire escape inspections. You're asking, where is your certificate for the fire escape that you should have been doing for the past 5 years, if not 50 years? And that's how you're gonna find these, one at a time. So if somebody pulls a building permit, the building inspector, if he's coordinated with you, he's gonna ask for the certification before they start working. Because OSHA requires, which I'll show you, that you must have a fire escape certified before any work can commence. So we're gonna give you all the bullets, all right? So let's talk about all the other cities. Seattle.gov, Portland, Oregon. They probably have the best system in the country for you to look at. Portland, Stu White, fire prevention, okay? You have in LA, Reg 4, LA Reg 4. They have the best one. You want to make money in this system? Nobody in fire prevention can do anything in the city of LA without having a license through Reg 4. So if your sprinklers, your fire escapes, your anything to do with fire prevention, I have to give them, it's every 3 years, you have to give them $3,000. Every time I submit a report, I have to pay the compliance engine $10, $20 to submit the report, because the compliance engine, I don't know if any of you have heard of compliance engine, and basically the whole thing is self-funded. So my license, I have to pass with an 80, and then I have to, in order to get my license, which I have to renew every 3 years, and to get my license is $1,000. It all goes into fire prevention. They also monitor your exams, so that every time you stop putting stuff in, you have to notify them 2 days in advance that you're about to do an inspection, so that they can witness the exam. They may never show up, but they always want you to tell them when they're going to be somewhere. So that's a great place to go. Cincinnati's got a new one that just came out, the new fire escape program. Philadelphia has a knee-jerk reaction one. Philadelphia, because of an incident that happened 5 years ago, now wants every fire escape in Philadelphia in the greater Philadelphia area inspected by July 1. How soon is July 1? Cincinnati didn't have an incident, a death incident, so they want all fire escapes done by July 1 that are 100 years old. Next year, all 75-year-old buildings by July 1 that are 75 years old. Then the year after that, all 50-year-old buildings. Then after that, they want everybody just to get all your fire escapes done. So you can either react to a bad situation, or you can say, hey, we got to get ahead of this. And this is what happened in Philadelphia. I taught about 50 or so. I taught the Liberty chapter of L&I, which is the licensing and inspection. I taught about over 50 guys in that class. And I told them it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. 6 months later, this occurred. But it took them 5 years after they went through the whole lawsuit. Them and everybody else associated with the whole scenario. And all of a sudden, their knee-jerk reaction is they came out just in February, March, they said all fire escapes must be inspected by July 1. It's an impossibility. You can't. We're doing it, but they're going to start extending it, because it was just too much. Because not every engineer knows what they're doing or how to inspect it. So let's talk about new fire escapes. As you can see, you can still build them, but be very clear that they only go on pre-existing structures, or you're replacing an existing structure. And and no ladders. So no fire escape ladders allowed. If you have a pre-existing one, you can maintain it indefinitely. It's a pre-existing rule. All pre-existing structures can be maintained as of the date of its installation. So we're not raising railings to 42, we're not taking bars down to 4. It's a pre-existing structure. We must maintain it as part of your fire code. I maintain that fire protection equipment as of the date of its installation. You can't force an upgrade unless there's a change of use or some other kicker that converts it. You want to? I think there's got 3 more people that came in. I think we need one more. There's 2 or 3 guys that came in.
Two came in.
Yeah. So a lot of this, and look at the tags. Imagine every fire escape in your city has a fire escape tag. So the first step is identify the fire escapes. You don't have to inspect them. Just start getting, you may want to speak with the city of Philadelphia. They are having people actually chime in to the city of Philadelphia and identify their fire escape on a map. Say, hey, I have a fire escape in this, and there's this map that's gonna have these little stars of where all the fire escapes are at. So the city of Philadelphia, as part of this knee-jerk reaction, is having that done. Yes?
Do these tags go directly on the fire escape? or
Yeah, they're
they
permanently
located-
attached. I'll show, I have a picture of one. So they're, is that recording, is the recorder on?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure. Just hit the red button. Sometimes you don't see the little red light. Because I'm going to put this online for you guys after this. But they're 7 to 10 feet off the ground, permanently attached. They have to be made of a material that doesn't fade in the sun. And a lot of times, they get it done by a print shop. Okay? And that's usually the cost of whoever's doing the project to pick it up, not you guys. Okay? So, and this is now in play in Seattle, in play in Portland, in play in the Boston area, not in Boston proper, but in some of the cities that have adopted, because if you wait for the state to adopt things, what happens? So a lot of it is grass fire. You do it, it starts from the bottom up, okay? So, but this is what happens. If the fire escape is in imminent danger, it gets tagged red. If it's under repair, it gets tagged yellow, and if it's in good orders, because a lot of times, as you guys know, if you've been training the fire guys who are out fighting fires, they're trained by the guys with the gray hair. They teach the new guys coming in case of fire, don't use the fire escape. That's what they're taught. Don't trust them. Don't trust these fire escapes. So if that's the case, something went wrong. Well, what went wrong is 75 years have gone by. They had no choice, because two things that a fireman worries about: getting killed in a fire and getting killed by a fire escape in a fire, because they do collapse and do fall apart. The last piece that I want to show you is that we're going to put together a program that just adds it to a checklist, right? And the main reason, because we're avoiding this. So when I say that a fireman have gotten hurt on these things, this is what happened. This is what happened in '75 to change Boston. There's a very famous photograph that won a Pulitzer Prize on the back side of that. And so that's the fourth story of a building. The fire truck ladder's coming over to grab those two people, and then at the last second, the fireman grabs the ladder, the woman falls to her death, the niece lands on her and survives. Okay, so it's usually some catastrophe that all of a sudden, and they changed the law, because the law then was fix it only when it's broke. But back then in '75, they changed the law in Massachusetts to have mandatory inspections of your fire escapes every 5 years, because something happened. But like anything else, people very quickly forget about a death a few years later, and we'll show you that, okay? So you want to go to some of these cities. Lowell, Massachusetts is one of our premier cities. That is a model city. So you want to speak with, so if you want to speak nationwide, there's always some city that has taken on this model, and a lot of times it's to get ahead of the curve of people getting hurt. So if anybody ever asks us why you bothering me with the fire escapes, you say, because the first one we're trying to save is the firemen fighting the fire. The second ones we're trying to save is the tenants in the building who are supposed to evacuate the fire by themselves. Okay, fire escapes are made for so people can self-evacuate. Firemen can use it to ingress, and then firemen can use it to egress when things get crazy. But should the fire escape fail, none of that's going to happen. All right, so now let's rapid fire ourselves through this. So when you get to, if you want to make a note, when you get to find it on Google, just type in fire escape issues. And all of Oregon, it's all on their website. How to fix it, how to repair it, how to scrape it, how to load test it, everything's there. Here's the confidence test. This confidence test, which we'll do at the end of the class, has 25 specific questions that every engineer and every architect hates, because it says yes, no, not an opinion. Did you walk the fire escape? Yes, no. Did you see that every connection, did it have internal rust or not? This internalization question of the rust is key, because a lot of times they want to do a drive-by. Roll down the window, grab the check, look up at the fire escape, say it's not on my head, sign the certificate, send it to you, you take that document, you stick it in a file, and then what happens? For 50 to 75 years, that's been the norm. But as soon as you have a dead fireman or a dead person on the ground, what happens? You can't take that piece of paper out of the file and revive that dead fireman, that dead person. But the lawsuits are gonna start flying, and a lot of it is, what have you been doing? So nationwide, it's always after a catastrophe, does somebody start suing the city, start involving the city, what were you doing? And the news hounds start coming down, you're not doing your job, everybody's budgets here have been cut, and so you cannot start another task force, but what I'm telling you, you're gonna make a simple checklist. This is just gonna be added onto a checklist. You can't go from A to C without going through B, and B is the asking of a current certificate. Not ordering one, asking for one. Not having one, you're still gonna go to C, but now you're gonna make a note and refer it back to fire prevention to say right of violation, because right now you, so here's the code, here's the 25 questions. You can, if you're welcome to use it, it's not copywritten. I mean, this is our latest, greatest. And so you can either write these questions out on your own letterhead if you want. You can use our letterhead, I mean, not our letterhead, you can use our questionnaire if you want. It has all the codes here, so in case people want to reference, we've referenced the IABC, the IFC, the technical, the OSHA, the NFPA, it's all here. Frequently asked questions, okay? On here is, you tell us what you want to tell the people. So if there's certain specific requirements you have, we put that on there for you. And this is the last page. This is a vendor. We want to find out if the vendor's properly licensed and insured. This will eliminate a lot of the witch doctors who have been fixing the fire escape. Okay, you guys remember, now I want to show you a little bit of history. So, 1975. You guys remember the Station 9 fire that happened in Rhode Island? So, 2003, thereabouts. Right? So, 1975 to 2005, let's say, just to give them rough numbers. 30 years? 30 years later, there's a fire down in Rhode Island, so Channel 7 is calling around and they find me, not because I didn't even have the National Fire Escape Association then at the time. I'm the founder. But she said, hey, I want to ask about fire escapes. I told her that over 75% of the fire escapes that look like fail. Over 50% of those have life safety concerns. She goes, no way, we have codes, we have laws. So she was calling me about the Station 9 fire, but she wanted to do a fire escape story, a 1-minute piece on how people can get out on fire escapes. And this is what came of it.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
I was scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
When it ran and just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So that over here? For months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the
Correct.
fire escape.
Correct.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in a cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files
But there's no fire escape certification.
to see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I
They
don't
know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No,
4 more fire escapes.
to the fault of the class. Yeah.
Not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track.
How can they get away with it?
I guess that the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this? No?
But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. There are more than 8,000 fire escapes. Again,
No way.
according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation. You don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi Ryan.
So, an immediate bulletin's gonna go out, more paper showing up at your door, and what happens? 10 years later, this happens.
Boston Mayor Marty Walsh acknowledging that lax enforcement by the city could have contributed to the Back Bay fire that claimed the lives of 2 firefighters. Welders working next door may have been working on the building's fire escape when they sparked the deadly fire. Fox Undercover revealed Wednesday that fire escape hadn't been inspected in 10 years, even though inspections are required every 5 years. Investigative reporter Mike Bodette digging up some new exclusive information tonight. Mike? We looked at the entire Beacon Street block where the fatal fire happened and discovered, just like 296 Beacon Street, most of the fire escapes there are overdue for inspections. It turns out the city doesn't have any mechanism in place to track building owners violating the rules and hold them accountable.
System.
Mayor Walsh is not happy. Are you concerned that inspection wasn't done since 2004?
Of course I am, and it's something that, constantly every day seems like something new is coming up around inspectional services, and we are looking at revamping a lot of the procedures in there.
Boston Mayor Marty Walsh talking about 296 Beacon Street, a place where welders may have been working on the fire escape, and they sparked the inferno at 298 Beacon Street, a fire that killed Boston Fire Lieutenant Ed Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy. Records reveal that fire escape had not been inspected since 2004, even though state building code requires inspections every 5 years. So the fire escape should have been inspected in 2009 and then again this year, which raises a troubling question according to fire code expert Amy Cronin, president of Strategic Code Solutions.
We have to question if it had been done in 2009, perhaps there may have been some damage there. Like if you think about rust, if you catch it early enough before there's massive damage and there needs to be reconstruction, maybe the welding would have never been done.
2 of our heroes lost their life in that fire, and I'm not sure if that was the cause, but regardless whether that was the cause or not, we still should have inspected that property.
It turns out many inspections are not being done. Fox Undercover looked at fire escape inspection records for the entire Beacon Street block where the deadly fire happened. 2/3 of those fire escapes are overdue to be inspected. 1/3 of the fire escapes on the block haven't been inspected in 10 or more years. It's the responsibility of property owners to get the inspections done, but there's no evidence of the city cracking down on owners breaking the rules. Shouldn't the city know if an inspection hasn't been done in all those years?
Absolutely, it should, and there should be a report generated that's able to find out what properties haven't been inspected. So if that's one of the properties that haven't been inspected on Beacon Street, can you just imagine the other properties in the city of Boston? That concerns me.
Back to 296 Beacon Street, where the welders who sparked the fire were working. We told you the last inspection on the fire escape was done in 2004. As we reported Wednesday, that inspection was done by Giuseppe Falcone,
who owned D&J Ironworks in Malden. Falcone is being sued by the owner of the building that burned down, but he denies having anything to do with the welding that day. No comment from the owner of 296 Beacon Street, which did not have the fire escape inspected for a decade. I'm Mike Bodette for Fox Undercover.
So she did the story with me in 2003, 2014. 10 years, they just let it go again. So it's always an accident, forget about it, because the mechanism, let's answer some of the questions that are concerned. How do we know what fire escapes have been inspected or not without having to go back to the city to pull a file? You have a tag on it, what happens? The tag tells you, just like an elevator tag that nobody puts in elevators anymore. Where is it now? It's in the manager's office. Where was it before? Right there. And so you would call the city and say, listen, I'm riding an elevator and it's been 3 years since they inspected it. So they started taking the tags out of the elevators and putting it in the manager's office. Why? So in case they missed their tags. So this is why you need to have a tag on a fire escape. And it's part of your fire prevention code. Check your code. Even way before we came up with this as an idea, it's already all fire equipment needs to be tagged. Is that correct? It's part of your code. Fire escapes are fire protection. There's supposed to be a tag on it. So if you put a tag on it, it's going to have the date of the last inspection clearly visible from 7 to 10 feet off the ground. It's a tag that's this big. It's 8.5 by 11. So if it has a white tag, you can look up and see. So any normal inspection routines that you go through, when your firemen are doing pre-plans, they can see what ones are tagged out. Okay? So that's the thing. And the mechanism right now is make it part of a checklist, because they were wondering why there wasn't a team to go look at these things. There's no team. Make it part of a checklist. You pull a permit, you have to have a fire escape affidavit. You do a re-rent, you have to have a fire escape affidavit. You're declaring the building safe again so it can be re-rented. You sold the building, you got to go through the whole process. Okay? So a lot of times it's a catastrophe, and a catastrophe, it happened in '75 that changed the code. So it can quickly get out if you don't make it an automatic. So in '75 they didn't make it an automatic. 30 years later something happened. So usually this has to happen on one of the firefighters have to happen, and it's happened all the time in Boston. They've had both. So here's what your firefighters are facing. They're getting to a building and they're looking at this. They're like, oh, there's a rusty fire escape there. I got to get up 1 story, or I got to get up 5 stories, or I got to get up 10 stories, right? And the fire escape, by the time a fire escape gets this rusty, does anybody know how fire escapes rust? Do they rust from the outside in or the inside out? Does anybody know? The inside out. By the time it gets this brown on a fire escape, it has eaten every connection to suspect. How much so? When you start looking underneath, because when you look at it from afar, it doesn't look so bad, but when you get underneath, and by the way, this is a detention center, a youth detention center, with not only prisoners, but also guards that have to use this every day to get in and out into a little open yard. This is how bad it was underneath. There's another one at a school. It takes 25 years to grow a 1/4 inch of rust. It takes 50 years to grow an average of 1/2 inch of rust. Look how much rust on this. And so what the firemen are facing nowadays is this issue. That there's rust that they can't see, and if people are smart, they'll paint it way before you get it inspected, and they'll paint right over this rust. And you know what happens? When the firemen arrive at a site, whether it's in the dark, whether it's in smoke, they don't have time to carry around a 2.5 pound hammer and do this.
Oops.
So the last thing they issue a fireman is a ping hammer to go ping-ponging up the fire escape.
What I'll do now is I have my
But if you look at this,
and I'll highlight it in red.
we're inspecting the fire escape and hammer testing.
Emergency lights.
And if you start looking at some of these, look at all the treads ready to trap or kill a fireman or a tenant. So this is why there's an order issued, verbal, it's not written anywhere, that the fire departments have issued. They say all firemen, in case of fire, don't use the fire escape unless it's your last hope. Don't save women and children and babies using the fire escape, because you could kill yourself trying, you can kill yourself on the way out too. Let's talk to you a little bit about the welding witch doctors. I pulled this fire escape off of a school. Guess who called me to fix this fire escape? Was it the yearly fire exam or fire inspection? Was it the yearly building inspection? Was it the principal or the director of the school? Was it the janitor who said, hey dude,
Probably the janitor.
I got a window here at Christmas time, I need you to take this thing out. So this is for a kindergarten to 8th grade, they use this fire escape every day to go out to the kindergarten yard. And this is what I pulled. So now, what I did with this one, I have it back in Boston, I actually was 4 feet wide, and I actually saved the fire escape because it was embedded into the ground, and I used it as a showpiece. And I shrunk it so I can carry it. So I shrunk a 4-footer down to 2. At the same time, I actually violated everything that you could violate because I have a master's degree in reverse stupidity. Not only do I know the right way to fix things now, but I know all the wrong ways to fix it from back then. And my job is to tell you why it's wrong. So welding of the fire escape, this is what guys do. We call them the welding witch doctors. As soon as you hear a welding machine on a fire escape, it's being done wrong. It's that, maybe that day you're not gonna get hurt, but very soon in the next 1 to 3 years, somebody's gonna fall off that fire escape. Because they usually weld all the rust. Look how bad that hole is and buried in the ground. A lot of times if you can't put stuff underneath it, what they do is they put a clip on top of it and they weld it to the individual bars. And you think these are all certified welders with their certs right there to show you? These guys don't weld, they melt rods on steel. Okay? This is the, welding shops, when you talk, not a welding outfit, we're talking about ornamental shops. A lot of times the guys who are there are self-taught how to weld. Look at all the orange paint on that. Orange paint on anything is an indication of what kind of paint. Lead paint. The EPA in 2010 says you can't burn anything that has lead paint, so you can't weld fire escapes anymore. Look at underneath. This is typical. You find this much rust, what do? Just weld the nose. You got the original square head bolts, you got rust inside the connection, who cares? Weld the nose. This is why firemen don't get on fire escapes. This is why fire escapes continue. So the correct repair, which takes a lot of time, so you have the magic threes when you do the, get a bid. 3,000, 13,000, 33,000. Just using those as relative numbers. But you can understand what's been fixing fire escapes for 50 to 75 years plus has been the $3,000 guys. The $13,000 guys don't even get a chance to shoot at it because the difference between 3,000 and 13,000, which is a better repair, you know what I'm saying, is not even there because the welding guys beat them out. And because there's no mechanism there to verify that the weld was done correct, that the repair is done correctly, what happens is as soon as you put enough paint on it, you're never going to see any of this stuff. So the $3,000 guys have been getting away with repairing fire escapes for 50 to 75 years. That's why people are falling, okay? And causing fires and killing in Boston in 2014, 2 firemen. The winds were blowing at 60 miles an hour that day. And by the way, the fire escape, the building that caught fire was not the fire escape building. It was the one right next to it. They were welding on this building. That building, the welding spark landed on the shed. The shed caught on fire, and if you see the wind that day, the wind blew a hole into the ground floor. And as they were knocking on doors, they died in the first floor because they were knocking on doors getting people out, but when they blew out the windows in the front, the draft basically pulled the fire right in there. So I took the fire escape and I shrunk it. Look at all the lead paint. By the way, this is how all the little kids were using this every day. So if your kid had lead paint poisoning, where do you think it was coming from? School. And they tested the house and they tested around the yards, but where was the kid getting it? So we made it a showpiece. We did a left and a right. The left side was totally done wrong. The right side was rebolted and done correctly. So this is where it was at the school. Every day they'd come out of there, and now we've made it and we came over to the side because they were able to run around underneath it and bang their heads on all the pieces of steel sticking out. All right, let's talk about live load testing. This is why firemen don't use it. Let me tell you the people that are getting hurt on these things. One of our guys, his dad died, fell 7 stories to his death in Chicago, fixing the fire escape. So these things not only kill firemen and tenants, they kill people like myself who touch these fire escapes because they're a deck of cards. You know what I'm saying? You don't know which one, but you have to have, it's a risky business. People are using fire escapes for all kinds of things. And with no smoking policies, what do you think most students smoke?
But right now, firefighters are taking down the ladders and rolling up the hoses. But earlier in the night, when they pulled up, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in their fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
Well, about 50 people were displaced inside this building. Our firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson, on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
I got called to this fire escape 6 months later.
Witnesses say it sounded
they
like
still
an
weren't fixed.
incredible explosion when the fire escape of the Philadelphia apartment building suddenly collapsed and injured 3 people.
NBC 10 cameras were there as a friend holds on to one of the victim's hands, who is apparently conscious as the victim is placed into an ambulance by medics.
KYW-TV reports a man who was critically injured and 2 women were rushed to local hospitals.
Police believe the bolts of the fire escape appear to have been rusted and dislodged from the brick wall of the apartment building.
The victims fell more than 30 feet to the ground, and now the incident is under investigation. Worth noting, the complex is more than 100 years old and even on Philadelphia's historic registry. Local reporters are all pointing out the city's licenses and inspections department hasn't filed any violations in the past when it comes to the old building, so Sunday's collapse came without warning. Neighbors say the 3 victims, reportedly all in their 20s, may have been partying on the fire escape landing before the incident. For Newsy, I'm Elizabeth Hagenhorn.
May have been partying. Is that the reason why they fell?
Maybe.
Any properly constructed and installed fire escape, will it ever fall? Can you put as many people as you want on it, including the landlord? Will it ever fall? If it's not been maintained, this is what happens. Now, I happen to be at the case. I happen to be in the area, but I wasn't called yet to be an expert witness.
Summary video. We're here in Philadelphia. All right. Some of the preliminary information that I'm getting out of this is that this piece here, which this is the back, used to be up against the building. These 2 brackets here used to be going to that 4th, 5th floor up there, where you now see the 2 blowouts. The blowout on the left and the blowout on the right. And it used to be attached there. And then this staircase, which is here, it went to that platform up there. And that platform up there also had a bracket which is now laying inside the floor below. So they either were going up to that upper floor.
So this is what happens when you get things that are 75 to 100 years old. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So when you start the examination process, all you're doing is trying to identify, like Cincinnati is doing right now. All 100-year-old buildings must be examined by July 1. All 75-year-old buildings by July of next year. All 100-year-old buildings by the year after. So if you want to get into a process, you need to start the process of saying, I need to have these inspected, but be ready for a 3 to 5 year program. Because it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to get overwhelmed. There's another fire escape collapse here, where, there was a bunch of people on this fire escape because the roofer, the guy who fixed his own roof, at the end when he put the fire escape back on with his sons, he had a couple extra bolts in his box. What do you do with those?
You don't need those.
So what happened is they're lucky they fell from here to 1 floor below. Otherwise, if they fell from here all the way to the ground, they would have all been dead. There was 5 people under that mangled. So that's lawsuits. There's another one close by here.
A startling scene in downtown Colorado Springs Wednesday after a man falls to his death.
I was just walking up the street to get to the bus stop, and the cops were right there, told me I couldn't come this way.
Police say the victim and several others were working on the roof of this privately owned building when the man fell.
He may have fallen a distance of anywhere from 15 to 20 feet is what's being investigated right now.
Tragically, the man died on scene. It's believed he fell from the fire escape and not the roof or a window, although how it happened is still unknown.
That's what's being investigated right now to determine the actual cause of the accident itself.
Right now, police say the death is not criminal and is being...
So what happened there was that OSHA actually called me on that. He actually was jumping on the cantilever, him and a couple of other guys, jumping on the cantilever because it wouldn't come down because they wanted to use it to bring all the stuff to the roof. And when the cable snapped, because they went all the way to the end, the cable snapped, the whiplash of the cable caught him. And he only dropped 10 to 12 feet. They don't want to mention on there, but
Nice.
there's another case right here in Boston where a girl, these are 2 5-stories on the hill, so this 5-story is higher. So the 5th story on this one sees the roof of this one. There's a brand new deck on the roof, so the guy that had the roof that, you know, they share a lot of times, crossovers, partying on the deck, the phone rang, his girlfriend decided to go answer the phone, and she's not used to it. And because it was missing its rail, she came in this way and she 5 feet to the ground. This is in Iowa. I did a case where a guy removed the fire escape to fix the window, then he put the fire escape back. He owns a lot of property in the university, and instead of putting the through bolts back in, he put lag bolts back in. As soon as they were watching the fireworks, 3 people fell to their, they didn't die, they all got injured. But what did they do? They took out the through bolt and put in a lag bolt. How do we know that? Because when they secured the scene and kept the fire escape in a secured location, which to them in Iowa meant they threw it in the field 8 blocks away. So this is us walking around a field with the fire escape pieces. And it's then that we found the missing, the smoking gun. We found the lag screw still in the steel.
Bruce, do you mind, gentlemen? Yeah, hold up here.
Yeah, that's a bunch of lawyers talking about because they see money. Whenever they see the smoking gun, they start calculating how much money they're going to make on a lawsuit. They put it back with a through bolt and a leg to the ground. You need both, or you just need one? You just need one. But they were so scared they put in both. This metal leg to the ground, on top of the asphalt shingles, are on pressure-treated sleepers. Right on the shingles. These legs over here that were never there before, on pressure-treated sleepers, are straight to the shingles with no lag screws. So these kind of things happen. So let's find out who inspects fire escapes. You read the code. Design professionals. Who's that mean? Engineers. Architects can inspect fire escapes. But how? What? Some people believe you guys inspect fire escapes. So we get a lot of calls that say